morning. Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are with us this morning for the first time, we are glad you are here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister. Our worship musician this morning is our music director, Tim McKnight. Welcome to this online worship service. Welcome to those of you on Sunday morning watching live using Zoom. Welcome to those of you watching the recording of this service later on our YouTube channel. For those of us using Zoom, please notice on your menu that you have a button that says CC Live Transcript. This is Zoom's closed captioning service, and you can click on it to hide the subtitle or show the subtitle. You're in control if that function is on or off on your screen. Also on your menu is the chat button. For those of you who like to use the chat box during the service, which you're welcome to do, please be sure that when you post, that you post to everyone. You use that little blue drop-down menu to select everyone. If you only chat with host and panelists, that's just me. I might not see it during the service, and I might not recognize that your message only came to me. So let's all give ourselves a big hug of hello and welcome. If you share space with someone who welcomes a hug, you can share a hug. Finally, I want to especially welcome those of you who are newcomers at Chalice this morning. Towards the end of the service, I'll put a link in the chat box for adding your name to our email list. Our weekly email is the best way to get information about the many groups and activities we offer, most of which are still happening online using Zoom. Now, let's take a breath together.
Good morning. According to the Library of Congress, the first permanent Euro-American settlements began a pattern of displacement and land appropriation of indigenous people that continued until the 20th century. In this region that we consider home, the Kumeyaay first lived here for over 10,000 years and were the people who greeted the Spanish when they first sailed into the San Diego harbor in 1542. With this awareness, we acknowledge that Chalice is located on the stolen, tribal, ancestral homeland of the Apai, which is part of the Kumeyaay Nation, and the Payamkawichem Nation. This acknowledgement reminds us that we live in a history-driven present and that we need to be intentional with this land and with the people indigenous to the land. Mary Lyons from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe states, "When we, the indigenous people, talk about land, land is part of who we are. It is a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future." According to the research done with Reclaiming Native Truth, 40% of Americans do not believe that indigenous people still exist in the U.S. Chalice hopes that with our first step of land acknowledgement, we can move towards educating ourselves and others about indigenous communities and their rich and diverse culture and create a meaningful relationship with them as well.
Now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice was first used during World War II by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. May our chalice flame burn brightly, that all who are seeking may find us. The words of our call to worship come from Reverend Jack Mendelson, he of blessed memory. Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Now we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new. Let us worship together. Please join in singing.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate lives will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gathered in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community, and we tend to the congregation during this time by sharing and honoring our joys and sorrows. I want to start by naming our shared sorrow at the violence at Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas yesterday. Yesterday evening, I emailed messages of our congregational support to our friends at Temple Adat Shalom, Ner Tamid Synagogue, and Chabad of Poway. The pain of having houses of worship violated is inexpressible. If you would like to share a joy or sorrow with the congregation this morning, now is the time for sharing in the chat box. If you'd like to send me a confidential note about your joy or sorrow, or to make a prayer request, please email me. I'll put my email address in the chat box. Our story is called Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed, written and illustrated by Mo Willems. There is so much to learn about the fascinating little creatures known as naked mole rats. But for this story, you only need to know 3 things. 1, they are a little bit rat. 2, they are a little bit mole. 3, they are all naked. Well, they were, with one exception. Wilbur, the naked mole rat who liked to get dressed. Hello. When the other naked mole rats saw him, they said, "Ew! Yuck! What are you doing?" "I like clothes," replied Wilbur. "When I get dressed, I can be fancy, or funny, or cool, or I can just be an astronaut." When the others heard that, they said, "Ew, yuck! If you like clothes so much, then why don't you open a store or something?" Naked mole rats can be very sarcastic. But Wilbur thought that was a great idea. The other naked mole rats did not. They brought Wilbur to a giant portrait of Grandpa, the oldest, greatest, and most naked mole rat ever. "Look at that picture," they demanded. "Look at his heroic face. Look at his regal bearing. Look at his total lack of clothing." Grandpa did look heroic. Grandpa did look regal. But he would also look heroic and regal in a casual shirt and some summer slacks. "Ugh," said the naked mole rats. "Don't you get it? Naked mole rats don't wear clothes." "Why not?" asked Wilbur. Something had to be done. The naked mole rats marched right over to Grandpa and told him all about Wilbur. Grandpa was very wise. He thought seriously about everything he had heard. Then he thought some more. Finally, he said in a heroic, regal voice, "Gather the colony. I shall make a proclamation." When Wilbur heard about Grandpa's proclamation, he knew it was serious. But he had no idea what to wear. In the end, Wilbur decided to play it safe. Maybe not safe enough. The others were so busy looking at Wilbur's socks that no one noticed Grandpa enter until he cleared his throat and proclaimed, "Fellow naked mole rats, I had never worn clothes until I heard Wilbur's simple question. Why not? Why not, indeed? Do clothes hurt anyone? No. Are they fun? Well, they may not be for everyone, but this old naked mole rat wishes he had tried getting dressed earlier." Then Grandpa complimented Wilbur on his socks. As fast as his legs could take him, Wilbur rushed home, put on his favorite outfit, and dashed back. When he returned, Wilbur discovered he was not alone. Much has been said about that day, but for this story, you only need to know 3 things. 1, some of the mole rats were naked. 2, some of the mole rats were clothed. 3, all of the mole rats had a great time. No exceptions. The end. Words from Lila Abraham. I've been going to the same church for a very long time. For nearly 30 years, most Sundays, I have walked through our beautiful redwood doors. In all those years, I have filled a variety of leadership positions, from teacher to board president, usher coordinator to stewardship co-chair. And in all those years, my congregation has had ample opportunity to disappoint me. I am disappointed when people don't think my justice project is the one we should collectively work on. I am disappointed that we don't all agree that our children's ministry is the most important priority in the church. I am disappointed that people don't give as much time, talent, or treasure to the church as I do. I am disappointed, well, you get the idea. In nearly 30 years of relationship, there have been lots of disappointments. 2 or 3 times over the years, I have been so disappointed that I seriously questioned remaining in my congregation. I have wondered if church is actually real. I have doubted its ability to provide the salvation of which we speak, lived, beloved community. On those occasions, I have thought, forget it. I can just stop going to church for a while or forever. But staying away has never helped me through such times. Rather, coming in closer, telling people about my spiritual crisis, listening, sharing, caring, and worshiping have helped me know that this is where I belong, even when church is the source of my frustration and disappointment. Because we are not in church to be with people who want to sing the same music or rally for the same cause or attend the same retreats. We are in church to learn to love better. And learning to love better can only happen when we love past our disappointments and return to a place of acceptance and affirmation. This is true in our personal lives, in our work lives, and in our church lives. It is a deep spiritual practice. At my best, as a religious person, as a Unitarian Universalist, as a member of this First Unitarian Church of Oakland, I am called to love whoever else walks through these doors. I don't need to like everyone. Not everyone is who I would choose for a friend. Not everyone agrees about what we are here to do. But if I am living up to my best values, I offer care and respect and commitment to each member, friend, and guest of my beloved community. In the end, we can all try our best to live out our faith as Unitarian Universalists through study, conversation, service, and commitment. We forgive ourselves and forgive others as we stumble through. We disagree, we annoy, we flake out on one another, and we worship, we support, we hold, and we affirm one another. There is really only one choice between imperfect community and no community. Again and again, we are all called to choose to commit ourselves to building a more just, more diverse, and yet ever messy and imperfect, beloved community. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke often about the beloved community, saying, for example, the aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community. The aftermath of nonviolence is redemption. The aftermath of nonviolence is reconciliation. The term beloved community is closely associated with Dr. King, but the term was first coined by philosopher Josiah Royce in the early 1900s. Royce's emphasis on the importance of community stood in contrast to the individualism celebrated by the previous generation, particularly the transcendentalists, some of our forebears, such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, and transcendentalists like Walt Whitman. Royce wrote, "My life means nothing, either theoretically or practically, unless I am a member of a community." Royce wrote of the beloved community as an ideal that would be achieved when individuals committed themselves to something bigger than just themselves. He called this commitment loyalty. The beloved community would exist when people shared of themselves, and at the same time, individuals would be transformed by their commitment to the beloved community. Royce's philosophy of the beloved community was expanded by Dr. King, who used the phrase often in his speeches and writings, particularly when he spoke of the importance of nonviolence. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community. The aftermath of violence is emptiness and bitterness. The beloved community is not a utopia. It's not an imaginary perfect place. It's not an ending, not a conclusion of struggle. We'll never say, here it is, we did it. We have beloved community, we're done. Beloved community is never done because it must be constantly created, affirmed, and recreated again and again. Not a utopia, rather it is a process, a way of being together that acknowledges our differences and our imperfections and centers love and justice as our primary concerns. So let me give you an example that we're working on here at Chalice. Whether you've known it or not, we're working on building the beloved community here. So for example, we have a policy called the Living Our Covenant policy, which describes some of the behaviors we expect from each other in community together. I think it's an excellent example of the kind of policy that helps guide the beloved community. Written and approved by our board in 2012, the policy opens with these words: "The well-being, strength, and reputation of our church depend on a sense of fellowship among the members, friends, and staff. A fellowship which thrives in an atmosphere of trust, respect, and cooperation. Within such an atmosphere, differences of opinion and their resolution through compromise or consensus can enhance a sense of community. However, differences or misunderstandings that go unresolved and descend into prolonged conflict can threaten the social fabric of our congregation. We expect that conflict will arise from time to time, and that when it does, its management and resolution are paramount. Therefore, in order to uphold our covenant with one another, we pledge to follow these practices when we find ourselves in disagreement." And then the policy goes on to articulate 7 agreements, which include agreeing to follow other policies we have related to conflict resolution. So you hear that in that opening to that policy, we don't think of ourselves as a utopia where conflict and disagreement never happen. Instead, we expect that conflict will arise, and our collective concern is how we address conflict in an atmosphere of trust, respect, and cooperation. So this policy has guided us well these past 10 years. However, as we grow and learn together, we will find that policies like this need to be updated to reflect new learnings. Unitarian Universalists who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, have spoken up to let congregations know the ways in which policies like this one don't fully work. So for example, the policy says a sense of fellowship among the members, friends, and staff thrives in an atmosphere of trust, respect, and cooperation. It might be expecting too much to assume that trust always exists or should always exist when BIPOC congregants are naming ways the community or someone in the community has fallen short. It is not always the case that BIPOC UUs feel trust in our congregations. One of the norms articulated in the policy is that we agree when in conflict to talk directly with the person with whom there are concerns. This is generally considered to be a very healthy expectation and one that is a stretch of growth for many of us, right? We're used to gossiping and fretting, but not always, we haven't always learned the skill of talking directly to someone when there's a problem. And that is a complicated expectation for BIPOC congregants who may be experiencing racism or may be concerned about racism. Is it fair to ask BIPOC congregants to address all conflicts one-on-one? Is it fair to treat racism as if it is an individual conflict to be resolved between two people? Our UU congregations are learning that our BIPOC congregants can become worn out trying to address congregational conflicts. So the beloved community doesn't say, well, we're done learning and we have a policy and we have to follow our policy. Instead, we know there's much about this policy that works well. And we also expect that policies need to be updated as needed. So I wanted to use this as an example of thinking about beloved community because it's an area of congregational life where the fact that we have conflict resolution policies is already a sign of tremendous congregational health. And just because we're doing something well doesn't mean that there's not more to learn and ways that we can continue to evolve. Beloved community is not so much described by what it looks like as what it does. What are its qualities? So the cornerstone principles of beloved community are love and justice. Love, agape love, love for all humanity, unconditional love. Dr. King wrote, with every ounce of our energy, we must continue to rid this nation of the incubus of segregation. But we shall not in the process relinquish our privilege and our obligation to love. While abhorring segregation, we shall love the segregationist. This is the only way to create the beloved community. Such a hard teaching, such a hard practice. We shall love the segregationist. And secondly, justice. Justice grounded in an understanding of our profound interconnectedness. Dr. King said often, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. For Dr. King, justice wasn't an end to be achieved by any means. Nonviolence was understood as critical, the only way to achieve a truly just outcome. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community, love and justice, the cornerstones of the beloved community, justice grounded in love, love grounded in justice. Dr. King said, justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. The challenge of beloved community is that it doesn't exist somewhere that we can study it and model ourselves after it. If we say we at Chalice are the beloved community, we are saying that we are dreaming, creating, learning, building, moving towards. Because beloved community is not about achieving some set of ends, some goals or outcomes. Beloved community is about the means, how we are in relationship with each other. It is how we work together that brings societal transformation. So for example, the goal of social justice work in the beloved community is a radical restructuring of relationships. Relationships become the focus of our social justice work, not the outcomes. We don't enter justice work thinking, what problems will we fix? We enter justice work thinking, who will we build relationships with? We focus on relationship because we understand that in our profound interconnectedness, injustice can be understood as brokenness of human relationship. Economic injustice is what happens when we treat each other unfairly, when hardworking people are exploited and cannot earn enough to live in spite of working full-time and even more than full-time. This is a violation of our human relationships with one another. Immigrant injustice is likewise what happens when we allow unreasonable immigration laws to create and support an exploitable class of workers in our culture for the benefit of business and at the expense of human rights. This too is a violation of our human relationships with each other. These violations of right relationship hurt all of us. When we who are passionate about civil rights work in right relationship with communities that are more directly impacted by injustice, we create together healing and transformation. When we collaborate with and are accountable to poor people and immigrant people, we are saying we decline to participate further in a societal structure that seeks to exploit and disempower you. We choose instead to build relationship. Activist Lila Watson, an Aboriginal educator in Australia, says, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Love and justice, the cornerstones of beloved community. Now that you know this phrase, beloved community, you will begin to hear and understand it more. Public intellectual Bell Hooks wrote, beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation. By each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. Bishop Desmond Tutu said, our survival as a species is threatened by global warming, economic meltdown, and an ever-increasing gap between rich and poor. Yet these threats offer an opportunity to awaken us as an interconnected and beloved community. Congressman John Lewis spoke often about beloved community, saying, for example, democracy is not a state, it is an act. And each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. The Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change just held a beloved community global summit, expressing a need for humankind to work towards a more just, humane, equitable, and peaceful society. And you've heard about beloved community in the wording of our proposed 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. The story we heard this morning was a lighthearted one, a fun one. Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed. I shared it because in its way, it's an example of working towards beloved community, right? So the tension between conformity and self-expression, Grandpa, the community elder to whom this problem is brought, shares his criteria for assessing the health or problem of what was happening. The main question, do clothes hurt anyone? No. The beloved community is not a place where anything goes and everyone gets to do whatever they want. Relationships matter. Harm matters. We aren't here to be all exactly alike. And we also aren't here to poke and hurt each other. As Lila Ibrahim wrote in our reading this morning, we are not in church to be with people who want to sing the same music or rally for the same cause or attend the same retreats. We are in church to learn to love better. We are here to learn to love better might be the best definition of beloved community of all. You're invited to sing hymn 121, We'll Build a Land. The words come from the Hebrew Bible, from the books of the prophets Isaiah and Amos, sharing their visions of a world rebuilt around love and justice. You will hear in these lyrics the echoes of words from Dr. King. Please join in singing.
righteousness stand her people. Oh, come build the
Sunday offering is an expression of the generosity that makes our congregational life possible. As Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron writes, generosity is an activity that loosens us up. By offering whatever we can, a dollar, a flower, a word of encouragement, we are training in letting go. Please text your donation to Chalice. If you haven't texted a donation before, know that once you text the amount, you'll get a reply with a link to follow to enter your credit card information. And if you've already entered this information previously when you've donated, you won't need to enter it again. If your Sunday donation is part of your pledge payment, please be sure to indicate the word pledge after the dollar amount. And also know that you can make a text donation anytime. It doesn't just need to be during this worship hour. So the phone number will be on screen in a moment, and I'll also put it in the chat box. Please give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. As Unitarian Universalists, we aspire to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. And now, a few words from Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Hello, happy Martin Luther King Day. Every year, Hunter Elementary School students are sad on Martin Luther King Day because we all sang this amazing song called Martin Luther King in our elementary school assembly. And it wasn't until we got out into the real world that we realized no one else knew this amazing song. And it turns out it was because our amazing elementary school music teacher, Barbara Ames, wrote the music and lyrics to the song. And it's one of our favorite anthems. If you went to Hunter, you grew up singing this song. And it's unfair that the rest of the world doesn't know it. So here we have Hunter Elementary School graduates from 1988 through 2001. That is the Miss Ames era here at Hunter. And we're all gonna sing, we're going full Mr. Holland's Opus, and we're singing the Martin Luther King song for you, the internet. Arthur Lewis is playing piano. Here we go.
Martin Luther King was a man with a dream. He took
Luther King Day. We love you, Lizzie! Mr. Sherman's here! Happy Alfred got here late! Happy Alfred!
I'd like to invite you to join me in a time of prayer. Take any posture that's comfortable for you, but I would offer a particular posture for Unitarian Universalists to try is to put left hand over heart, acknowledging the individual, right hand to the person next to you if someone is there, or in the air, acknowledging our interdependence, our interconnectedness. The words of our prayer come from the Reverend Audette Fulbright Fulson. Holy Spirit, God of ages and so many names, we gather once again to rejoice in the light offered to the world by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His walk on this earth was a gift to generations, and today we give thanks for that gift. We know that we are called together today, not simply to rejoice and be glad that such a man was given to us for a time, but rather to heed the calls he made to us, the same calls that reverberate now as they did when he was alive, the same calls you have made time and time again in a voice of justice that calls us throughout the ages. We are called to hear that same word of truth that Dr. King spoke, that the hungry and poor are with us still. It is not enough to march and remember. The work we are called to do is to feed hungry children and to wipe the tears from our siblings' eyes. It is not enough to sing a joyful song. We must also build the houses that will give shelter to every adult and child and allow them full security and dignity. We are called today to remember that we are not to judge one another by the color of our skins, but by the content of our character. In a world where our families are knit ever more tightly together, past old ideas of color and race, we know that the tyranny of fear and hatred still exists in human hearts. We know that racism still lurks like a viper around unexpected corners. And so we gather again to renew our promise to one another that we will be vigilant. We will be warriors and peacemakers of a new world, a world that is always dawning, the kingdom of God, which is always at hand among people who work and pray and give thanks together. Holy Spirit, on this day of remembrance, we do give thanks. And we are joyful that for a time we had our brother and father, our pastor and leader, Dr. King, with us. But we do not forget that the mantle he wore for a time has been passed now to us, to each of us here gathered. And it is in our efforts, in our faithful struggle, and in our generous witness to a better world becoming that we make our most powerful prayer of thanksgiving. Thank you, gracious one, for this day and for all our many gifts. In a spirit of remembrance and a spirit of gratitude and hope, we set forth once again with your guidance and strength to make the world anew. Amen. You're invited to join in singing.
Above the 17
Before we close the service, I'd like to remind newcomers to please use the link in the chat box to add your name to our email list. There you go. If you would like to discuss the 8th principle and some of the ideas you heard about beloved community today, there will be a breakout room for discussion as part of our coffee hour after worship. Our closing words come from Elena Westbrook. Go in hope, for the arc of the universe is long, and we can bend it toward justice. Go in courage, for together we have the strength to confront injustice in our daily lives and the larger world. Go in love, because the holy and generous love is both the reason and the means by which we transform our lives. Love and blessings to each of you. Blessed be. You're invited to close our time together by singing the well, and then please stay put. We have a quick announcement about our upcoming auction. It's not the same announcement as last week. The auction is something fun we can look forward to and be planning. And then after the announcement, everyone is invited to coffee hour.
Chalice. I come to you today from my garage. And in this garage today we have a serious problem. The problem is golf balls. Look here. A whole bushel basket full of golf balls. And look in this box. Even more, this huge big box has more golf balls in it. There are so many golf balls here that they're in danger of spilling out of the basket and rolling on down the Hamilton Lane all the way to Chalice. I mean, what to do? What to do? Oh, wait a minute. I did hear that Chalice is having an online auction on February 27th, and that they need arts and crafts to sell at the auction. So maybe I could make some crafts out of these golf balls. Maybe you could make some crafts out of these golf balls. There are lots of ideas online, and we all need something to do to keep busy while we're waiting out the Omicron virus. But wait, maybe golf ball crafting isn't your thing. However, Perhaps you have some lovely art, or you make jewelry, or you decorate eggs, or you paint rocks. Or maybe you even are very good at taking environmental waste and creating something useful. All these things would be really wonderful for our auction. We all need a little beauty and whimsy in our life right now. So please, create something beautiful or whimsical and donate it to the Chalice auction. And while you're at it, stop by my garage and pick up your free golf balls.